What's up, YouTube? In today's video, we're going to build out this sort of menu animation using GSAP Flip and Webflow. So whenever we hover off of the menu, it just closes. We can also hit our escape key to close this out, and it just basically grows this whole shape into place like so. So I'm excited for this one. It'll be a good introduction to GSAP Flip if you haven't used it before. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'll head over to Webflow. And in Webflow, I'm going to drop in a div, and we'll give this the class of nav wrap. And I'll go ahead and let's tag it as a nav. And we'll go ahead and position it fixed to the top of the screen with 1000 z index, like so. And then inside of that, let's drop another div and give this the class of nav contain. And we can give it some left and right padding of 2 rem. And we'll give it a min height of something like 6 rem for now, just so we have that in. And then let's go ahead and apply flex to align center, justify space apart. Inside the nav contain, I'll drop a link block. We'll give this the class of nav link wrap. And inside of that link, I have this embed here for my logo. So I'll give that a class of nav link svg. And we want the links throughout our site to inherit the parent's font color. So I'll just drop an embed in here where we can add some style tags. And let's go ahead and set all links to inherit from their color will be the parent's font color, like so. So we're good to save that. And let's go ahead and grab this embed. I'll just set a width on it, something like this for now. That's good. And then we'll drop another link in here, and this one's going to be called nav hamburger. And we'll say nav hamburger wrap. And let's go ahead and give this a width and a height. I might do something like 3 rem by 3 rem for now. And inside of that, we'll drop in another div. And this is going to be the div that we move from this hamburger to the menu. So it's going to grow and shrink. And we'll just call this nav hamburger base. So it can be position absolute to cover its full parent, which means that parent nav wrap needs position relative. And we can also give the base a background color. I'll use this color for now. And let's give it a radius. So normally I'll just do 100 viewport width to make it perfectly round. But since this will be growing into the menu, I'll actually set its radius using rem. And I'll give it just enough to make it a perfect circle so that when the size of this grows, it actually doesn't make a perfect oval when it grows into the nav. So that's good for now. And we'll go ahead and drop a div inside here. We'll call this nav hamburger line. And I'll just give this a width, maybe 50% of its parent, a height of 2 pixels. And let's give it a background color that matches our page color. And then we can select the link and apply flex, vertical, align and justify center. And we'll give the line position relative so it sits on top of the background. And then we can go ahead and duplicate that line. So we have 2 of them. And I'll apply some flex gap, maybe something like 6 pixels for now, just to space them apart. And let's make sure that line is set to don't shrink or grow, just so it doesn't get squished. So that part's looking good. And then that's all inside the nav contain. Then we can go ahead and drop a div inside our nav wrap, and we'll call this menu wrap. And this can be position absolute to the top of the fixed nav. It'll be 100% width, and we'll give it 100 VH height. And I'll go ahead and make sure that the container has z index of 2, and the menu has a z index of 1, just so we can still click on this even when the menu is open. So we're going to have a div inside of our menu that's going to act as our background layer. So I'll just give this a class of menu base. And this can be position absolute to cover the full menu, 100% within height, and a z index of 1. And we'll basically set the background color on this to be black, but turning down the opacity slightly, so that whenever we open this menu, this base element kind of grays out everything behind it. And also when we hover onto the base, it should close out our menu for us. So let's go ahead and drop a div inside the menu wrap. and I'll just call this menu contain. And I'll grab the menu wrap and give it some padding, but I want it to be not quite as much padding as what we see here. That way, when the menu grows, it grows out past this nav, and I'll show what I mean by that in just a second. So we can grab our menu contain, and for now, I'll just give this a width using rem, something like that, and I'll give it some padding inside like this. And then I can select the menu wrap and apply flex to align top, justify this way. That way this menu wrap is right here. So what's going to happen when we click on this hamburger is this base layer is going to get moved outside of the hamburger link, and it'll get moved into the contain. So it'll be position absolute to that contain, which just means the contain needs position relative. And I'll give it z-index 2, so that way it's on top of the base. So that's how it'll basically grow, like that. And then we can drop basically all of our links in here. I'll just drop in a text link, and we'll give this the class of menu link. And I'll give this a position of relative, so it's on top of the base, z-index 2. We may need to set a color on it. There we go. And we might want... so this is getting in my way, like I can't click on the link underneath just because this is at a higher z-index. So what I'll do is give this nav contain here, nav contain pointer events none, just so we can't click on it. We'll be able to click through it, and we still want to be able to click on the logo and the hamburger inside of it. So I'll do nav contain direct children, and this is anything, no matter what the class is. If it's a direct child of the nav contain, we'll set it to pointer events auto, pointer events auto, and that way we should be able to still click on this and that, but the whole nav container shouldn't be in our way. Now we can click on the link. So I'll give this link a text decoration none. Let's bump up the font size a bit. We'll change this text to say we'll say home. I'll go ahead and duplicate this. This one will be about. Duplicate again. This one should be work. And let me grab the whole menu contain, and we'll apply flex. That way we get them stacking under each other. I'll duplicate this again, and this one can be contact. Okay, and let's just grab this contain. I'll back down the padding a good bit on all sides just to get it a little bit closer to the edge, and I'll add more top padding, so we just space this out a bit. And that's looking pretty good. I think that can carry all the way down, and maybe about here it might look weird to not have it cover everything. So what I can do is give this a width of 100%. That way it spans the full parent. Let's see what's going on. There we go. So that's good there, and it should have had a max width of 100% on desktop, just to make sure it never overflows. And then the only other thing is here it's coming over the logo. So what we might want to do is give the nav contain a z-index of auto on this breakpoint, and then give the hamburger, just the hamburger, the z-index of 2. So that's on top, and the logo's behind our menu. So that's looking good there, and I think that's everything we need for the setup. So I'll just be targeting by class for all of this. We can go ahead and set the base. We can drag that back into the hamburger wrap. I'll make sure to give it a z-index of 1, and be sure to give these lines a z-index of 2. And that should be everything there. Make sure our links have z-index 2. Yep. Okay, that's good. So our menu wrap will be display none by default. That way we're not seeing it. I'll go ahead and let's add GSAP in real quick. So we'll go to greensock.com/install. And we'll be using the GSAP library right here. And we'll also be using GSAP flip. So I can just copy those, head back over to Webflow. We'll go to our page settings, and we'll add it in the before body tag. And then let's just go to Code Sandbox, and I'll create a new project. It'll be static template here. And inside of that project, we'll create a new file here called a script.js. we can copy the URL to our sandbox here and head back over to Webflow. And in here, we'll just add open and closing script tags. We'll set the source to be our code sandbox URL /script.js, which is what we just named our file. And then we'll add the closing script tag. So that'll just give us the code sandbox file will be there. All right. So I'll go ahead and open this up and we'll bring it over towards the top. All right. And there we go. So I think the first thing we're going to do is I'll start by looping through the nav component. I always like to keep everything in each loop, even if there's only one element on the page, just so that way we have all our timelines are contained in kind of in each loop. So I'll start with my nav wrap. Let me just zoom in here and we'll do .each and we'll do a function. And inside of that function, we'll just open it up. So we have our nav wrap. We'll want to get our hamburger element. So we'll say let hamburger L equal this, which is the nav wrap we're on, .find. And we're going to find this link block inside. So I'll just copy that. And then let's grab some other elements we need. We'll need our nav lines. So I'll say let nav line L, and that'll be equal to this, which is our component.find. And let's find these ones, nav lines, and we'll just target that class. Something else we'll need is our menu contain. So I'll say let menu contain L equal this .find, and that will be the menu contain is where we're going to want to move the background div into. So that'll be this class here. All right. And then we'll say let flip item L, and this is the element that we're actually going to want to move between the hamburger and the menu contain. So that'll be this base element. I'll just grab that there. And then we can say let menu wrap L, and this is going to be our entire menu wrapper. So I'll say this .find, and I believe it just had the class of menu wrap, so that's set to display none, and we want to change that to display flex. I'll also create a menu base L, and that'll be for that background element that when we hover over it, we want to close the menu. So that has the black at the opacity, and that just has the class of menu base. So we can add that in there. And then let's see what else we have. The only other things we'll probably want are our menu link L. And we'll just grab the menu. I believe I called them menu link, and that should be good there. So we're going to want this interaction to trigger whenever we click on the hamburger element. So I can grab that hamburger element. I can do on click, and we'll add a function in here. And we're going to say on click of the hamburger element. We want to check if it has the class of nav open to see if we should open the nav or close it. So I'm going to say if this hamburger element we just clicked on has a class of nav open. And if so, we want to open menu. If not, or actually if it already has the class of open, we want to close the menu. And if it doesn't have that class yet, we want to open the menu. So for this part, we'll have, let me go ahead and set up the timeline. We'll basically put all this on a GSAP timeline. So I'm just going to create let TL equal GSAP.timeline. And we want that timeline to be paused true by default, so it doesn't play yet. Pause true. And then we'll say the first thing we'll do is TL.set, and we're going to set our menu wrap element to a display of flex, since it's display none right now in Webflow. And then we'll also set the menu base element. So I'll say TL.set, or we can do a from animation on this so it animates smoothly. I'll do a from animation on the menu base element, and we're going to animate that from an opacity of 0. We'll do some kind of duration. For now, I'll just pass in a duration of 2 seconds or something like that. And then the ease, I'll do none just to make sure it's smooth, fades up smoothly. And then from there, we'll want to animate our lines. So I'll do a TL dot from to on, or we can actually just do a 2 on the lines. And we'll grab our nav line L, and we're going to grab only the first one. And we can have that one animate on the Y, maybe 4 pixels down, and then rotate 45 degrees. And then for the duration, I'll just pass in whatever I want my duration to be here, I guess 2 seconds. And then we want this to happen while the menu background element is fading up. So we'll just add this symbol in here to make sure these 2 steps happen at the same time. Then we can copy all that and grab our second line, and we're going to pull that one up by -4 pixels, and it'll rotate -45 degrees. So it'll go the opposite direction. So for now, I'll just add this in here. We'll just say on click of the hamburger, tl.play for now. We'll just play it. So let's click this and see. Let me make sure my code sandbox is running. Let's do, usually just like to do a quick alert ran, just to make sure that's good. So no, that's not, must not have published or got the right link. Let me check this real quick. Copy that URL. Let's come back over here. We'll paste in the URL. Script.js. Let me just try republishing. Maybe it didn't catch the code sandbox link in there. Script.js. Unless the nav wrap isn't, unless it's not getting that nav wrap in there for some reason. Nope. Okay, weird. Let me just create a new file, and we'll say menu.js, and I'll just move all that into this file just to make sure. All right. Oops. Refresh. Oh, closing script is messed up. Thank you. Yep. Okay. It's always something so simple. All right. Cool. All right. So I can delete that menu.js. Just run this one. And let's go back. Refresh. See if this works. Oh, it's so slow. It's 2 seconds is way too slow, but it is working. So, all right. And then the only other thing we may want to do is have the menu links kind of stagger up. So I'll do a, let's go back to our timeline, tl.from on the menu kind of link elements. And we'll animate them from an opacity of 0. We'll say a Y% of 50, so it'll push them down by 50% of their own height. We'll give it a duration of 0.2 milliseconds for each word, and then we'll stagger them with an amount so that they all start over 0.2 second duration. And so if we save that and we refresh, so now this opens, and then each link should kind of slide up one after the other, which it's doing. So now what we'll do is set up the flip. So I'm going to make that, we could add it to this timeline. We could create a TL and then do an add, tl.add, and add the flip in. But I want this to record the starting state and the end state of the flip every time we click on this menu. That way, when the screen resizes and the position of things changes, this is all calculating in real time. So we're going to break the flip out into its own function, and I'll just create a function here called flip, and then I'll pass in, we can say if we want to flip this forwards or backwards. So from there, I'll just say let state, and this is how we're going to record the position of that background element. So we'll say let state equal flip.getState of the flip item element, which is that little background piece. So it's going to record the position of that. And then if we said we want to move this forwards, then we'll grab the, let's see, what did I do? Forwards. All right. Then we'll grab the flip item element and we'll append to, so we're moving it into the menu contain element. All right. And then else, if we're running this animation backwards, we're going to move it back into the hamburger element. So I'll just say hamburger element. All right. And that way, when we call this, we can just pass in, every time we run this flip function, we can pass in true if we want to move it forwards into the menu, or we can pass in false if we want to move it back into the hamburger. And then we just want to play our animation. So I'll do flip.from, and we're going to animate from the original position we recorded that item to be in. And this will happen over some kind of duration. I'll still put 2 seconds for now. And there we go. So I want to connect that to this timeline. So, and it should happen right after the menu set to flex. That's when we want to record the position. So I'm going to do this as a callback inside of this base fading up. So we'll do an on start. And that way, as soon as this part of the animation starts playing, we'll flip and we'll flip it forwards. And then whenever we reverse this timeline, we're going to do a, whenever this part starts going backwards, or actually it's going to be this part because these are all happening at the same time as the background fading. So we want the menu to slide back while all these 3 steps are animating. So we'll say when our menu links, we'll run a callback for this on reverse complete. So when we play this timeline backwards and the links finish animating, then we're going to flip it back into the hamburger. So forwards will be false. And just to test this out, for now, I'll just do a, let's do this dot toggle class nav open. So every time we click on the hamburger element, we're toggling the class open. And then if it has the class open, play it, and else reverse it. So we can just test this out. All right, let's save it. Let's come back over here. Let's click. So now that thing is growing into place. The links slide up. And when we close, it's shrinking back down. So this is already really coming together. Now it is a bit slow. And I would like to be able to control that duration for each thing. So the duration of the shape growing and shrinking, the duration of the background layer fading up, and the duration of the lines should all be linked together. So what we can do is create a variable. I'll say let flip duration, set that equal to like 1 second for now. And then everywhere we were using that, like inside the flip, I can pass that in, inside the menu fading up. And then for each of the lines, we can link them all to that same duration. So we can change it from one place. Now we're also going to have, whenever we hover into that background element, we want to close the menu. So for that, I could do a, what would we call it? Menu base element. We're going to do on mouse enter. So whenever we hover in, we could just reverse the timeline like so, tl.reverse. And that way, if we come back here and we open, so that's good. And then we hover into that background piece and it closes. Now, when we go to open the menu, the first click did nothing. And that's because we didn't remove the class of nav open from the nav. So that's why it's, this isn't completely synced up. So I think what I'll do instead is, and one other thing, if I come back over here, refresh. So if I click very quickly, notice it kind of bugs out this animation. Normally with a GSAP timeline, that wouldn't be a problem because on play, it'll go forwards, on reverse, it'll reverse the full thing. But if I click before this step ever happens where it's appending the flip into something else, then it gets off sync with the placement of this div. This div's in the wrong place compared to where our timeline is. So to solve that, we want to make sure that we can't click to change the animation until our timeline is finished. And to do that, there's something in GSAP we can use. So I can say tl.isActive. and that will tell us if the timeline is currently playing. So this will return true if the timeline is currently playing, and then it will return false if the timeline is not playing. So we could just wrap this whole thing in an if. So we want to say if we add this exclamation point here, that means run this if the timeline is not active. So as long as the timeline is not currently playing, then allow us to click to toggle the class in reverse. But we would have to do that also for the mouse enter on the base to reverse the timeline. Every time we want to trigger this to close, we would have to keep checking this. And we'd have to keep adding that class. So it gets to be a lot of code pretty quickly. So I'm just going to break this out into its own function, and we'll just call this function something like open menu, and then we'll be able to pass in the open state, true or false, if we want to open it or close it. And then inside this, we're going to run this whole if timeline is active in here. So that way we can do it from this one place. We don't have to keep checking it inside the hamburger click or inside the menu base. So we'll remove it from there. So say whenever we run this function to open the menu, the first thing we'll do is check if the timeline is currently playing, and then we'll check if open was true. So if we actually want to open the menu, then we'll do our tl.play. So we'll play the timeline from here, and then we'll grab the hamburger element, and we will add the class of, let's add class of nav open. And then else, if we actually want it to close this menu, we'll just do the opposite. So it'll be tl.reverse and remove class nav open. So that way it plays backwards. And then here, all we have to do is, now we don't toggle the class from here because it would be hard to keep these two in sync. So the function will handle whether the class is on the hamburger or not on the hamburger. And if that class is on the hamburger, that means it's open. So we want to close the menu. And then if the class is not on the hamburger, we want to open the menu. And then whenever we hover into that menu base, we want to close the menu. So that way we can clean all of this up. And if we save that, refresh here, click, and hover off, and it works, and I click again for the first time and it opens. So no issues there. If I click really fast, it's not letting me do anything until that animation's completely finished. So everything stays in sync. And then we can just continue to build on this. So if we want to do hitting the escape key to close the menu, we can do document, and we can do on, I believe it's key press, key down. So we'll do document on key down, and we'll pass an E to get the information about that event. And we'll say if e.key equals escape. So if the key that we hit on the document is the escape key, then close the menu. So save that. And now if we refresh, click into this, hit the escape key, and it closes out. And then we can click again. The only thing we should potentially want to watch for is if I click here and then hover here, it doesn't run because the animation wasn't finished. So it didn't allow hovering into this to close out the menu. So just to solve that, I might also add on this menu base an on click. So just in case we hovered onto it before the animation was finished, we'll also allow the user to be able to click on this to close the menu, just as a good fail safe there. So now we can hover. And then if we hovered out too soon, now we can click and that closes. So cool. And that keeps it all synced up with all these different actions, one timeline powering our open and close. And I think that's about it. I'm going to go through the questions and just see if anyone had anything. Saw someone. Okay, no, I don't see anything. Awesome. All right, well, great. Thanks everyone for joining in. Hope this was helpful, and I'll catch you in the next video.